Hey, I'm Jared from Functional Podiatry, and I've got Hugh with me today who helps out on our shoe reviews. So we're talking today about the Brooks Glycerin 21 and the Brooks Glycerin GTS 21. So we've taken these for a few different runs, and it's just our thoughts on how we found them. Hugh and I have a slightly different run style, and so it's pretty cool to get a feeling for what we felt and how we found the shoes differed based on sort of the way we run. I got to try out the Brooks Glycerin 21. I found it pretty fun shoe to play in, so I took it on a 10k run and I've taken it on a few long runs up to about 17, 18ks. I found the interesting part about the shoe for me, because I'm more midfoot to forefoot striking, I found that it sort of, the responsiveness out of the midsole, I sort of sunk into it but then was snapped right back out of that shoe. Did you feel similar things with your GTS, or did you find it a bit different for you on your runs?
So I'm much more of a traditional mid rear foot striker, especially at the paces I was running this at. So I did a 5k park run in the shoe where I was rolling through a couple of different paces, and I also did a couple of treadmill runs just so I had a really good structured feeling for how quick I was going, where I was landing, so I didn't have to deal with the outdoor variables of running in Queensland summer. I had a pretty different experience in it. For me, I felt like I was sinking into the midsole a lot, but then not really getting a huge amount out of it, except when I really started to push the pace. So I only was getting the same kind of feelings of spring and explosiveness that Travis was getting when I was pushing above like a 4-minute 30 pace. Admittedly, I was racing someone at parkrun at the time, so, you know, it might have been just my inner competitor, I'm not quite sure, but I had a pretty different experience with the shoe. Did find the GTS go-to support incredibly unobtrusive, which I think is really, really good as a stability shoe, that you don't feel it digging into your arch or the outside of your heel. It was really, really nice to run in, and I found it very supportive, which it's in the name.
Do you reckon if you played around a little bit more with where your strike pattern was, and maybe that was some of the reasons you weren't getting that response to the field, it was too far forward and not enough like into that sort of position for the shoe to come through?
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, I noticed a bit more as I started to pick the speed up, because to necessitate running faster, you end up having to kind of spring out of it a little bit more through your forefoot. And so I did notice a bit more of that, especially when Travis pointed out to me. I tried to play around with that a bit. I did feel it more and more. So I think I'm going to put this one down to the shoe maybe not suiting my strike pattern particularly well, but I did find it quite comfortable on the park run I did.
Yeah, because I know when I was playing with mine, because obviously I'm further forward, but if I started hanging back into sort of more of that rear foot strike, which you'll find predominantly a lot of people do adopt the later they do run, that I did feel like it sort of rolled me through and then snapped me out of that position, which for me was interesting because it was kind of hard to adjust how I sort of changed my strike and come further back from this very aggressive forefoot strike. So I did find that. I think the interesting part for me was that it held up from the start of my run to deep into like 15, 16 Ks. Like, it was still snappy. Obviously you lose some of that snap, right? Like it's not going to stay the entire time, but it still was there. Like, it still felt like as I came through, it pushed me forward and it was sort of enabling me to go a bit quicker, which was interesting for sort of the type of shoe it is compared to sort of like if it was more of a tempo shoe. But like, I expect that to be there, so it was quite nice for me being sort of that daily sort of trainer to get it out. I know I find, because I run in sort of ultras and topos, that I do find some of the toe boxes can be a little bit tight for me. But I found personally with this one, it was quite wide. Like, I still had a bit of room to play in that toe box. And found like I wasn't restricted, and that the upper sort of sits really quite snug and just held me in place. It wasn't sort of like stuck in those things. Do you get a similar feel with that one, or for you, your foot type?
Yeah, so it's also partly the reason I'm here is I don't run in zero drop shoes, so it's nice to have someone with a bit more of a conventional running shoe experience. I had absolutely zero complaints about the upper. I felt the lockdown was really, really good. I wasn't getting any shift in my stride, in my footing. I did run up and down a couple of quite small hills, but still hills there. I didn't get any slip from the sock liner. My feet weren't moving around. Again, I felt the toe box was certainly completely fine. No issues with it. I do have quite long toes, so even in my regular sizing, sometimes I do notice a couple of issues with either getting the shoe to sit in right or having to stop and adjust it on my run. Parkrun, I didn't have to adjust it once. I was pretty satisfied with the lockdown, the fit, the feeling and everything. Because I only took it on 5k, I don't quite have the experience over a longer distance with seeing if the GTS support did start to bother me a little bit, but from my initial experience, I can't imagine it would. It really was quite out of the way, and I don't want to say I didn't notice the support it provided, but until I went back and saw some photos from that parkrun, it did actually straighten my stride out a fair bit. So, which for those of you that are unlucky enough to have seen me run, you know I very possibly need. But I did really enjoy the shoe. I was at the middle of a fairly intense, towards the end of a fairly intense training week when I wore these at a parkrun. So I was carrying a fair amount of fatigue, and they did a really good job getting me through that parkrun completely fine. I did wish it was a little bit more responsive. Travis talking about how much snap and sprint he got out of them did make me quite envious. Because I can see exactly what the shoe is trying to do, and I think it does a really good job of providing unobtrusive support. I probably just wish I got a little bit more explosiveness out of it. Not enough to truly properly change my stride pattern. No, I did try, but I just couldn't quite get there.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part with all shoes, right? They're never going to fit everyone, right? It's never going to be, oh yeah, I stuck the shoe on and maybe run fast or anything like that. It's going to come down to what you're looking for out of that shoe. And if you can make it work for your foot typing and the way you strike, it's going to give you a lot more. I think the interesting part is that we are pitched with the GTS that they are a guide rail system. They're not there to be the old school idea that you see this hard position here and it stops you all the time. So it's neat hearing your perspective on that. You didn't feel it all the time. You only felt it when you sort of needed those things. So it is sort of that guidance system that they wanted. And it's always quite nice when we see those things, right? When you always get the pitch seats. And they are, it does these things and that, and sometimes they hold up and sometimes they don't. And that's always just the hard part of life, I guess, with every runner and different things. And so from what you're finding, it seemed to do exactly what the box described. I guess for me, the other thing that was interesting, I took mine on a very, very wet run. So we got a very untypical Queensland day, and it bucketed. So I can say they hold up in the wet. I took it through a few puddles, and by puddles it was like knee, sort of somewhere around mid-shin. It definitely took on a bit of water, but it was quite interesting for a not trail shoe to take it through. Up and down some small hills with it completely wet, it did hold up really nicely, and that was pretty cool. So for me, I like the shoe. I think it fits the bill for what it was designed to do. And yeah, I would, for someone who doesn't run in a traditional shoe, I quite liked it. Would definitely add it in the rotation just as a recovery shoe for me because it's higher drop than what I traditionally run in. It's unfortunate for Hugh. I don't think this one will make the cut. Just it doesn't work for his foot, and that's okay. Like I said, these things sometimes don't work, but for what it is, if you do like the features, it's definitely worth giving it a try because it could work for you, and it could definitely be the shoe that you're looking a little bit of support there, but you don't like that feeling of support in some of the other shoes. And so I think that's probably where it would fit. Anything else there?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like it's a good shoe. I see what Brooks have tried to do with it. I like it. I think it's, as Travis said, if you're looking for an unobtrusive supporting shoe, it does a really good job at being that. I think just for me, this is a case of right shoe, but not the right shoe for me. It is a nice shoe, and I think they've done a really good job of making the guide rail system as supportive as it is without being intrusive. So, yeah.